What's up, everyone? Today is March 9th, 2026. And yeah, I'm going to be going over today's price action, the two possible entries that I would have taken or wanted to take. And yeah, let's get right into it. All right, so let's go back to when market first opened, right? So right here, we are at 9:15. And originally coming into the day, this is what I'm first seeing, right? So right now, I can see that we created this new week opening gap right here. Price shot down, and we have all this low resistance liquidity right here. This is big targets for me. And just because of all this liquidity right here, we have stop losses down here, 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 here. All of this is just a very good trend that price wants to come and sweep all that liquidity, right? So my daily bias was neutral. However, seeing all the formation of the lows, I really wanted price to react off this new week opening gap, maybe tap into it one more time and push down, right? That way we're sweeping all of this liquidity and we have London lows. We did create a bearish SMT. My daily bias was slightly bearish. So right at market open at 9:30, we get this huge candle displacing all the way up, and we ended up tapping that new week opening gap, right? And like I said in my daily bias, I want to see us tap into this and take shorts. All right, so let's fast forward one more minute. And look, we create this huge displacement candle down, right? And what did we create right here? We ended up creating this 1 minute fair value gap. And this is something I want to see get disrespected, right? So I want to see this next candle close below this gap with big displacement, proving that we do want to go bearish, right? And I would have probably my first break even right here and my take profit at these equal lows. And we fast forward and look, this 1 minute gets completely disrespected. This is exactly what I wanted to see. However, the problem I had with this is that we also had a 2 minute gap right here. And we also, on top of that, had a 3 minute gap. And on the higher time frame, the highest one we ended up having was this 4 minute. And look, as you can see, we did have this 4 minute gap, right? And it tapped in, and then we got that big candle displacing down, right? But yeah, any day of the week, I would have loved to target these equal lows, right? However, since we just had such a low closure, our risk reward would have been so bad that it didn't even make sense to enter the trade. And I would have loved to keep pushing down. However, we still had this 15-minute gap that we were respecting. But yeah, that's just unfortunate. We didn't really get the close that we wanted, but that's okay, right? And after that, price didn't do anything crazy. I was still very bearish and I wanted to see price go down. So when price retraced up, I was still going to try to find an entry. However, we were just stuck in this range, and this is just something I do not want to be trading in, right? We are in such a little like barcode type range. And I hate blaming price action because it sounds like cope, but it is true. Price action is very choppy and it's not really giving us any big moves. And even though I was still bearish on the day, there was a long opportunity here. And this was also giving me some conviction just because of the new week opening gap. And even though my daily bias on the day was bearish, I really dislike trading away from the new week opening gap or new day opening gap. All this gap is, it's an imbalance. And we know that price is going to eventually trade back and fill this imbalance. And what I would have loved to seen, since we are in a bearish bias, I would have loved if price ended up sweeping all of this low resistance liquidity. We swept London lows, had an inversion right at this point, and then we took our continuation longs up to this new week opening gap, right? That would have been an ideal situation in my mind, and I would have loved to plan for that. However, I did see an opening gap right here that we could have taken a long on. However, the one thing I did not forget is that we were still respecting this 15-minute bullish fair value gap, right? And that higher time frame fair value gap has a lot more weight over what I want price to do. And that is why this long opportunity looks semi-good, especially since we reswept these relative equal lows. All right, and then the second entry opportunity was actually this long right here. So after the stale price action, price kept on bouncing up and down, and right here we ended up forming these equal lows, right? Here, I'm just gonna go in replay mode for the simplicity of things. All right, so at 10:10 right here, look, we created equal lows. What do we know this as? That's a good target. That's a good draw on liquidity, right? So we ended up taking this, and what we also had to the left around 5 a.m. was we had more equal lows all over here. And originally I was targeting London lows as, look, we have all this low resistance liquidity right here. We have all this that we could sweep out. However, we use this equal lows as a draw on liquidity. And as we can see here, what did we form? We swept that low and we formed an inversion fair value gap, right? All right, so we formed this 5-minute bearish gap off of this SMT, connecting these equal lows right here. And once we took this liquidity, what happens next? The next candle ends up closing above this. And now this was a great entry for long positions. However, my bias was still bearish as we had the SMT forms on ES. NASDAQ was very choppy, and I still had all this low resistance liquidity that I wanted to take. And I originally thought that, okay, maybe if we do take these longs, what would end up happening is that we would come up, retrace into this gap, or take these intermediate highs out and just sweep down. So This was a good long position. I would have definitely taken this trade if I was more bullish on the day. However, that was just not the case. And at this time, I was already too freaked out by the very choppy price action in the morning. And especially after yesterday's close with all the volatility, it wasn't looking too promising. So I did not end up taking this play, but that's besides the point, right? So if we did take this long position, we could have either targeted these equal highs right here and put our stop loss at the bottom of this wick. However, if we switch to a higher time frame, like the 15-minute, we still have this whole new week opening gap that we can still take out, right? And in this case, we did end up tapping into that gap earlier. However, we never completely flushed through or never ended up taking that equilibrium, which is what another target could have been of, right? So I think these equal highs were a great target just for now. However, if you wanted to see a long-term play out, we could have easily targeted the equilibrium of this new week opening gap, right? So we close above this 5-minute gap, and what happens? Price shoots up, and we ended up displacing completely through TP. And now we could end up targeting this equilibrium in this new week opening gap, right? And the two other targets that I want to mention are these two swing highs, right? So look at this 930 candle right here. Price opened, we wicked all the way into the gap, and this was a great target too. And if we even go before, we could even see this gap right here, right? This is after disrespecting all bearish bias. And what ends up happening, we can see price plays out, and look, we ended up taking this swing high before and also the 930 open. So both of those were also really good targets. However, in my model, I would have targeted these equal highs just for now, right? I'm comfortable with taking my piece of the pie, getting in and getting out. And yeah, that was pretty much it. It's 11:20 right now, so market is still opening. However, I got off the charts after this. And yeah, we can see price pushes up. Maybe we're going to trade into that equilibrium, which looks like we already did. But yeah, that's just a quick recap on today's price action. Hopefully tomorrow, Tuesday, March 10th, we'll have some better price action. I'm just assuming, since we had those big volatile moves on Sunday, that price is going to be very choppy Monday and Tuesday. And then Wednesday, when we have CPI and red folder news, we'll get a lot better price action. And hopefully that stays constant throughout the week. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. If you like this content, please like, follow, subscribe, comment, share. Anything you can do that helps. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow.